Cincinnatus goes back to his plough, becomes a hero for not taking power longer than a few days. Thing is that a decade or so later, one story says he did come back to power, and he took up the dictatorship again in order to put down successfully a popular uprising. Now, that's where I wonder how far Johnson had thought through all the implications of the story of Cincinnatus.
Boris Johnson has always had an eye on the future, while simultaneously mining the ancient past for inspiration. His farewell speech of an hour or so ago was no different.
Let me say that I am now like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled its function, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down invisibly in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific. And like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough, and I will be offering this government nothing but the most fervent support.
Cincinnatus, eh? Who is he? Well, the best person literally in the whole world to ask that question to is Professor Mary Beard, the classicist who joins us now. Morning, Mary.
Morning, Stig.
Now, he knows what he's doing. He is many things, Boris Johnson, but he has a cursory knowledge of the classics. So this will no doubt have been a very pointed reference, you'd imagine. Tell us about Cincinnatus. Who was he?
Yeah, well, Cincinnatus has a simple and a complicated story. The simple one is that he's a politician in the mid-5th century BC at Rome. He's sort of in retirement. Rome is threatened by an invasion. Cincinnatus is asked to save the city and to take on, for a short time, the dictatorship and beat the enemy, which he does. He then simply returns back to his retirement on his farm. He goes, as Johnson said, to his plough, and he's become a model ever after for someone who doesn't actually try to hang on to power when they've finished. And George Washington loved him. All kinds of people have loved him. That's why the city of Cincinnati is called Cincinnati. There's a
but coming, isn't there, Mary?
There's a but coming, But one thing you have to know about Cincinnatus is that he was a well-known enemy of the people. He did not wish to give people their due rights. He was an absolute elitist Roman patrician. You know, in our terms, he was dead right-wing. But there is an even more uncomfortable bit of this story, because Cincinnatus goes back to his plough, becomes a hero for not taking power longer than a few days. Thing is that a decade or so later, one story says he did come back to power, and he took up the dictatorship again in order to put down successfully a popular uprising. Now, that's where I wonder how far Johnson had thought through all the implications of the story of Cincinnatus.
Well, that is an interesting question, because either he wants to say, I'm going to go off to retirement and be left alone, or, I mean, what do we make of this? I mean, it's very hard to know someone's intention, but the feeling is he wants to get people talking about him. He wants to be in the centre of things, even as he leaves Downing Street. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, Mary, is he, that he knows the story well enough to know that the little epilogue is that Cincinnatus came back when he was needed?
Yeah, it is not beyond the bounds of possibility. And it's like a lot of these early Roman myths. It's a great story for having it both ways. You know, I'm going back to my farm, you know, to write my books or whatever, plough my fields. But wait a minute, you can never be quite certain that I won't be back. When Rome needs me to put down a popular uprising, I don't know.
So are you saying that Cincinnatus might be the patron saint of having his cake and eating it?
I had not thought of it that way, Stig, but I think that's a very, very good way to put it. But I'm pleased because one thing it has enabled us to do, so thank you, Prime Minister, we've brought Cincinnatus to the notice of the British public.
Well, actually, and also it's worth some of his government reflecting that, because they think classics is no use to anyone. And here is a real world example of it being of use.
Exactly. I mean, so the more people who know about Cincinnatus, the better. I'm hoping to get him trending on Twitter.
Cincinnatus trending on Twitter would be not a bad result for today. Mary, great to speak to you. You're our Cincinnatus, actually. You've slightly retired, and we've brought you back when we needed you.
I know, but I'm not seeking power. Don't worry.
Okay, that's well. We could do worse. Mary Beard, great to speak to you as ever. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's Professor Mary Beard there, explaining the classical reference for Boris Johnson.